The core objective of modern large language models is highly accurate next word prediction. To achieve this, the model has to develop a deep contextual comprehension of the text you feed it. When you ask a question into an interface like ChatGPT, it predicts the next word in the sentence, then uses that new word as an input to predict the next, generating a complete answer. Earlier machine learning models approached language by assigning fixed numbers to words. They built static embeddings, representing text as vectors in a high-dimensional space. But a static embedding space collapses polysemy, multiple meanings for the exact same word, into a single mathematical coordinate. Take the word dish. If you write, "I made an Indian rice dish," you are talking about food. If you write, "I washed the dirty dish," you are talking about a plate. Look at this 3D vector space. In a static embedding architecture, the token for dish is plotted at the exact same mathematical coordinate for both sentences. The model cannot resolve the syntactic ambiguity. To solve semantic ambiguity, modern models cannot rely on fixed vocabularies. They must dynamically recalculate coordinate geometry based on the surrounding tokens in the sequence. Teaching an algorithm to understand dynamic context requires exposing it to humongous amounts of self-supervised, unstructured text data. Models pre-train on massive internet scrapings, primarily encyclopedic corpuses. By crawling millions of sentences, the model maps the baseline relationships between millions of token pairs. The architecture that processes this data is the transformer. It takes tokens and passes them through an encoder block to generate context-aware embeddings via a mathematical mechanism called self-attention. Unlike previous recurrent neural networks that read sentences sequentially, transformers process entire sequences in parallel. This creates an immediate mathematical challenge. The algorithm loses all inherent knowledge of word order. To build the encoder block, the input sequence is first split into discrete tokens. Each token is mapped to a specific index number in the model's vocabulary. The system retrieves the static embedding matrix with 768 dimensions. Because tokens enter simultaneously, the system lacks grammatical word order. The solution is positional encoding. A uniquely calculated positional vector is mathematically added to each static embedding vector. This merged baseline matrix mathematically encodes both the inherent semantic meaning of the token and its exact sequence position, preparing the data for contextual routing. The self-attention formula computes semantic relevance. Embeddings project through pre-trained WQ, WK, and WV weight matrices to derive Q, K, and V. The query vector seeks targets. The key vector advertises characteristics, and the value vector holds the semantic payload. Fracturing a single embedding into these three distinct vector spaces creates the geometry required to calculate relationship strengths across the sequence. The equation calculates the dot product of the query and transposed key vectors to find semantic alignment. This scalar is divided for numerical stability, then normalized by a softmax function into percentages. Finally, these multiply against value vectors, summing into a single output. This summed output is the contextually shifted vector for the target token. Its coordinate has been successfully altered by the gravity of the sentence. A single attention pass only captures one specific relational dimension, like an adjective modifying a noun. By running 12 to 96 of these projections in parallel, known as multi-head attention, the network simultaneously extracts diverse relationships. The architecture concatenates these parallel outputs and feeds them directly into a fully connected feed-forward network. Attention applies purely linear transformations, but human language is nonlinear. The feed-forward network applies independent nonlinear transformations to each individual token. To ensure stable gradient flow when this block is stacked 12 to 24 times in succession, the architecture wraps these operations in strict structural safeguards, layer normalization, and residual connections. By layering linear contextual mapping with nonlinear refinement, the architecture builds massive complex feature representations, far beyond simple word association. Returning to our 3D space, we can visualize the result. The stagnant dish vector is physically dragged to a new coordinate space by the gravitational pull of the vectors for sweet, Indian, and rice. For sequence-to-sequence tasks like translation, this fully enriched matrix is passed out of the encoder and handed off to the decoder. The decoder uses cross-attention. It generates its own query vectors from the new output language, but pulls its key and value vectors directly from the encoder's deeply contextualized matrix. This mathematical framework was published by researchers working at Google in the landmark Attention is All You Need paper. Replacing static point association with dynamic, matrix-driven self-attention is the exact mathematical breakthrough that mapped the fluid complexity of human language into computable space.